Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second installment of the live workshop series that we've got going on for the EVMxIdeathon. Today, we've got the pitch deck workshop. And so if you didn't catch the last live stream, that was with Ben Sigmund, and he went over design thinking. So if you missed that and you have some questions about how you should consider coming up with a new idea, what you should or shouldn't do, that's a great presentation. That is featured here on the Helios YouTube channel. You can find that if you look through the channel you're currently watching this on. If you're watching from Twitter, again, you could probably find that further down in the feed from the Helios team. So yeah, this has been so far very successful. We have a lot of entrants thus far. The last I checked, we were well over 100 entrants in just a week into the event being live, which is quite excellent. We've got another 5 weeks to go, so lots of time for those who haven't entered yet. Any of the actual project submissions are not even due until October 31st. So again, plenty of time. The event today is meant to really help folks come up with their pitch deck, which is a big piece. In fact, an integral piece of the Ideathon track, where you will be expected to, in fact, submit a pitch deck and record yourself or someone from your team delivering that deck. I have noticed a couple submissions have come in and they seem to be like an auto-generated recording. So it's like robot voice, and that's fine. You can do that. There's no rule saying you can't. But I would suggest that you would be wise to consider doing it, actually recording it yourself. Consider maybe coming on camera in the corner of the screen, because for the final live decision process of who actually gets the top first, second, third in each of the 5 Ideathon tracks, that will be a live presentation. Think very much like Shark's Tank in the United States, where you've got live judges right there asking you questions and you delivering a live pitch. So if you've done a robot generated presentation for your submission, that's going to make it harder to try to sort of consider whether you actually will be able to present that live on November 14th, which is when that will take place. So also to keep in mind, for those of us in the Korean and Chinese community, we have been adding subtitles, professionally done subtitles by the EOSBs. Thank you, Jesse and team, for doing that. Those subtitles are available now for the opening ceremony, which you'll also find in the Helios YouTube playlist, and the design thinking workshop are coming. And so again, for all of these live presentations, there will be subtitles in both Korean and Chinese, just a couple days delayed. So with no further ado, let's bring in Gavriel Shah from the Helios team. Welcome, Gav. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to drop off and let you take it away.
All right, I've got my slides, I've got my advanced button, so here we go. Welcome to the EVMxIdeathon pitch deck workshop. We are going to do a couple of exercises in this workshop, so do have notepads at the ready. We're looking for a 5 to 7 minute recorded presentation of your pitch deck. And throughout this workshop, we're going to skirt around these topics of the kind of categories that you want to include in your deck and the quantity of content. This is really a very key issue, because if you drown us out with too much information, judges kind of lose track of what you're talking about, and then it doesn't work out well. We also look at what depth of technical solutions to include and how to reveal the commercial viability or the real world impact of your big idea. So the Helios Incubator has advanced through 5 waves or 5 groups over the past 8 or so months. And one alumni project won a 2nd place at a pitch competition just recently. And we're learning a lot about how to help projects present a sophisticated pitch. And that's the basis of what we're doing today. A little bit about me. These are job profiles that I've held over a 15-year career. And what I realized through my career is that it's all about mitigating risk. People are struggling. They're doing the best that they can as professionals. And as a newbie, I was brash and overconfident about what I was trying to accomplish, and became disillusioned with centralized management throughout my career. Bewilderment, overwhelm, frustration, disappointment eventually turned into a realization that executives and founders and investors developers and managers, they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants half the time, or another analogy, they're running with their pants on fire, and they're just trying to do the best that they can with the limited resources, time, and energy that we have available in a rapidly changing marketplace, all the more so in our field of Web3, right? And it means that when it comes to planning a product launch or launch a new business, we take too many risks. We make too many assumptions. We leave too many pieces of the puzzle unfinished, the cake half baked. We don't validate enough of our ideas before we build. We cut too many corners. And that's a big part of why startups fail. Kind of a juvenile, naive arrogance that stops us from doing our best work. And how you present your pitch should demonstrate how credible you and your vision are. So as we begin this workshop, we're going to start with a few big no-nos and then look into the strategy and give some clear pointers on how to best present. And this will be useful not just for the Ideathon, but as you progress in your own career with a growing team and even launch your own startup. So the first big no-no is people tend to have, especially developers or technical specialists, they have a fixation on the technical solution. And they don't yet necessarily have a commercially validated concept. So the way that you state your technical solution in your pitch deck should be relatable to non-developers, commercial people, product people, marketing people, and a wider team at large. And a better heuristic than loving or obsessing over a solution that you have is really to understand from the human side, what is the customer's problem that you're addressing? And product managers use this kind of concept a lot. The best product managers fall in love with their customer's problem. And then the technical solution or the solution implementation is the secondary piece of the puzzle. Yeah. The second big no-no is what we see in a lot of ICO pitch decks, where, especially from 2017, and it still happens, is this kind of a pie chart of where they expect to put money. This is not a business model. And we're going to touch on idea on the next slide of what that is. But a token sale, I tweeted in January, a token sale is not a business model. So we have to really rethink from developers looking to raise money for Web3 projects, what is it that investors are really looking for? More sophisticated investors, and all investors in crypto community are becoming gradually more and more sophisticated. So here it is. The concept that we have for the Ideathon is to focus your idea in terms of a business model on these three areas. First is the user journey. And there's a very useful tool called Pirate Metrics, and it's with this acronym that sounds like a pirate saying R, and it stands for awareness, acquisition, activation, retention, revenue, and referral. And so you want to account for not just your idea, again, not just that technical solution, but what is the full user journey? How do you expect to gain awareness for your idea? What is the acquisition process? How do those users end up on the platform? And be as specific as you possibly can based on research and experience. And how are they activated as users? How do you retain them? Maybe there's some technical features that help to retain them. Maybe it's communications. Maybe it's just the value that they get, but being very clear on what that is and why it's relevant to them. Then your revenue model, which is the list of ways that you can possibly make money as a dApp or an app. And then how might you actually gain referrals into the app? So word of mouth, customers are happy, users are happy. Maybe there's a technical mechanism in there, a referral link or something that they want to share, or messaging that they can reshare. something along those lines. So this is a part of the business model from the Ideathon perspective. The second area is costs, right? It's not just the costs of developer time and building code, but it needs to account for all of those things throughout that user journey, which includes the acquisition, which you might think of as marketing or advertising. The other area of importance for a business model is revenue, all the possible revenue streams for monetization, both at launch phase, right? You're thinking you want to bring this idea to market, starting with a simplified version of a bigger vision, potentially. And then also, what are those revenue opportunities longer term as your product evolves and the business evolves and you have more resources? What might the revenue opportunities look like to include, to retain and maximize the value to your users so that you can make the revenue, the profit. And again, just if you go to Google and just search, look up Pirate Metrics and decide how to present your user journey and the costs and the revenue opportunities in your pitch, perhaps the better that you can do that, the stronger your idea pitch can be. Big no-no number 3 is this idea that I'll just do a token. So like what we just covered is kind of involved, right? It's kind of complicated. It takes effort, it takes time. If you're a developer, it might be a little bit foreign to you to think through along those kind of terms. You might think of that it's more strategy, or it's more marketing, or it's more product. But that's what the Ideathon is all about, is bringing those different kind of skill sets to bear on producing your pitch. So the trap is that I'll just do a token sale and I'll worry about the business model and the forecasting type stuff later, right? That's not really good enough. This is, I think back to the ICO days, 2017. One project I had to work with in 2018-19, the guy had raised multi-millions of dollars and he was receiving death threats, and he was extremely stressed because he'd raised money. He was able to do a token sale. He had a big idea. It was a fantastic idea, but he wasn't able to execute. He wasn't really able to bring it to market. And so after a year of having raised the ICO money, he still did not have a product available, which he'd promised his investors. And so not just a personal reputation risk, but he was also receiving death threats as well. And none of us want anything like that to deal with. So you need the business model before you do the token sale. So that your advisors, you can get advisors, you can join incubators, or you can bootstrap your efforts to build some level of traction, is what we're really encouraging through the Ideathon. Is how do we take an idea and start to validate it in the market with a business model before we even have to write any code, right? So moving on, big no-no number 4. This idea that, again, kind of a similar theme, but the concept from the 1800s, where this guy, Ralph Waldo Emerson, said something along the lines, which has been reinterpreted, but building a better mousetrap, right? So if you build a better mousetrap, the expectation is that everyone will love it, and the easy bit will be finding customers, and the world will beat a path to your door.
Hey, Gav.
Yes.
I'm wondering,
I haven't advanced
I'm
my
not sure.
slides.
Yeah, it looks like your slide didn't advance. And there was a question that maybe you could just briefly touch on from Hernan here. And he just asked, how far into the pitch you suggest getting into the revenue models? So basically, yeah, how detailed do you want to go on that type of topic?
Great. Thanks for the question, Hernan. We will cover a little bit more of that in this session, but to touch on it now, not very much, right? We're looking for the idea, and we want to see the list of ways that your idea could make money. And I've got a table, I've got a link as a reference, but we don't need tremendous amount of detail into the intricacies of the revenue model. So lighter, and I'll show you as we go through the rest of the workshop, the balance of that kind of content. Apologies for not advancing my slide. It's that I had speaker notes, and so I'm juggling between advancing the slide and looking at my speaker notes as well. All right, Chris is going to help out with advancing slides. That's great. So let's move. So it's that short-sightedness of building a tech thing that we think is cool, expecting that it will auto-magically lead on to launching a high-profit DApp or startup. That's a mental model that we need to kill as a community. It doesn't happen that way. There are so many good ideas, so many efforts to start building an application, and even we think of it as a minimum viable product because it has some features and functionality. But unless we have users, unless we have customers, unless we have that path to market, then it's just not going to. It's not the strongest case that you can make for your pitch. So again, making these few points. So if we move on, the correction is to plan, refine, and advance the entire end-to-end user journey in line with the full user's context. And we're going to start our first workshop exercise on the next slide to go through capturing what that user's context is all about, so that we're appreciating again that end-to-end user journey, not just the technical solution. So on the next slide, we have something that I developed called a customer scenario map. And I'll talk you through this, and we'll put 10 minutes on the clock. So those watching now or watching the recording later, go through this 10 minutes and to capture this detail, because again, this is the foundational thinking process for how to relate to a technical solution from the human user customer perspective. And we spend more time on this in the full incubator program, but this will get you started to present what we need in the Ideathon. So just to talk us through this, the problem is in the middle, and you're thinking that you're addressing some particular problem, right? And then we're looking for, well, what are the causes of that problem? What is the environment that those causes exist in? What is the evidence that you have for that problem existing? And this is, again, part of building credibility for your pitch, is to show that you have evidence, you have reasoning, you have justification, you have data, you have something that shows that this is a significant enough problem, a big enough problem on which to build now in today's market a viable, scalable, commercialized DApp opportunity. The solution, the big yellow box, is your idea within the framework, within the context of that background of problem and causes and evidence. And the problem should be a significant enough problem, a high level of pain, some rating out of 10. And you might be able to speak to potential customers about how significant the problem is for the solution that you're looking to develop. And we also want to understand, again, from that human side, the implications that we have of the problem. So how does that impact them in the real life? Not just the narrow focus of the product, but what does this mean to them? So for example, if you trade platform, then if they're not able to trade successfully, then they're losing money, they're not getting the Lambo, etc., etc. This is really impacting on their life in that human sense. And that's what we're looking for you to be able to communicate, again, in the Ideathon, so we have a holistic perspective. The substitute solution box is about the alternatives that your potential users are currently turning to, because that's all that's available, because your amazing solution is not readily available. And so hopefully that gives some context. Play around with that. We're going to put 10 minutes on the clock. And I'll start the timer now.
Jeff.
And I'll just confer with the team. Chris, go for it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if we do a 10-minute gap, we may lose some live viewers. So how about those who are watching this recording, which I think would be the vast majority of those who consume this, pause for 10 minutes. Go ahead and work away. But what we can do anyway, for those who are following on live, we can there's a couple questions that have come up, and maybe you could kind of speak to those to kind of create some time here. And that was the first one, if you want to read that and give a response. And then there's one more question I'll bring up, and then we can probably move on.
All right, great. So from Frios, curious to know why Visit app might have an estimated value, or even some of the later stages. Doesn't conversion come into play? Yes. So what fantastic question. So we will labor on that a little bit. If we can jump back up to slide 10, folks. So the question really is, how can we possibly put a monetary value on things that aren't actually revenue producing in and of themselves, right? So the answer really is that we're backwards converting. We're saying that what we know is that this is the price point that we have for a customer. We're going to charge on the slide. It says minimum revenue of $5, right? So if our revenue, if our price for our product is $5, and we expect that we need 100 visitors in order to make one sale, 1% conversion rate, and we're going to make $5, then we can just divide it backwards and find out how much each of those visitors is worth. So hopefully that's clear. Let us know if not, Frios, and we can talk a bit more, or we can put that into one of our future updates. The other question, would the winner be allowed to code the idea or get funding? Would the winner be allowed to code the idea or get funding?
That's more of a general kind of question, I suppose, about the whole thing, not even necessarily tied into the pitch deck piece that you're teaching. But yeah, so Justice, the winner will be allowed to do whatever they want. First of all, I mean, you just receive funding. Winners receive funding, right? That's the whole, the final outcome of this whole event, whether you're the Trust EVM team track or you're in the Ideathon track. So you will receive funding. What you do with that funding is up to you. So if you want to code that and use the funding that you get to code that, you're welcome to. Yeah, so it's actually not either or. You know, it's not or get funding. If you win, if you're one of the top 6 in each category for the Ideathon, you get funding. And from the Trust EVM track, there's 21 potential winners to get funding. I think if that's what you mean anyway. So yeah, okay, I'll drop off, and maybe just again, to those who want to work through what Gav here has on the screen in terms of a 10-minute, which is how it's probably worth describing in terms of what folks do in the actual the incubator that Helios runs. Maybe just briefly speak to that. And this is sort of part of the process, right? It's like a workshop. It's like a live. Maybe you want to talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. So in the incubator, we have we actually have conversations across the different groups, and it becomes very interactive and collaborative against different projects, different teams. And this is one of the exercises that we do. So I'd suggest that just maybe take a screenshot. We will have notes after this. Be sure that you're catching our emails for the Ideathon, because we will definitely send some notes following this workshop. But go through the motions, take a screenshot for now. After the call, then take at least 10 minutes, if not a lot longer, to really think through what information do you have to support the case that you're making in your pitch. So that's some background context. Let's move on now to pitch strategy and get into the specifics of what you can include in your deck. So next slide. For the Ideathon, the suggestion that I want to make is this, is a concept from Jim Rohn, who was Anthony Robbins' mentor, if you're familiar with Tony Robbins' name. And this is that preparation boils down to the concept of building it twice, right? And it's evident, it's kind of obvious in the sense of architectural design. The more accurate you are with the pre-planning, 3-dimensional models, looking at the measurements and the furnishings and all of the bits. And we can even think of that in software development. Software tends to go much better if you have a work breakdown structure and you have your user stories and your epics, and you're going to actually go through the details of what you're building, the architecture, before you start coding. Sometimes we don't do it that way, but it's certainly cleaner. So this is the idea for the Ideathon, is that the pitch deck and the research that you put into it demonstrates the quality of thinking that you are putting into your big idea. That's building it once. Then judges can see that you could actually build it in reality as a scalable startup, and that would be building it twice, right? So the pitch strategy is that really commit to being clear, like architectural plans, on what it is that you want to bring to market in all of its nuance. But again, we do it in a succinct way. So next slide, pitch reviews. This is the judgment criteria is the four of them: the creativity, impact, viability, and presentation. And the way to approach that is to include these three areas, right? Viability and impact as one area. Is it a compelling idea that suits a credible gap in today's market? And oftentimes we receive pitches at Helios, and again, people are obsessing over a technical solution, but they don't really identify, they don't specify why or where this really is a relevant opportunity for today's trending marketplace. And that's a crucial foundational part of it. The next part to include is your plan, your POA, your plan of action. Is there a clear implementation plan for success? You want to be able to convey that, and that might be about your user journey again, showing how things fit together from that acquisition perspective, activation, even to the point of showing which features you would build first, because they're the best features, they're the most needed features, and then some level of a roadmap leading into future ideas for development. So is there a clear implementation plan for success? The third area to make sure that you include in your pitch is the risk versus reward. Does the potential reward, right, in terms of financial and human benefit, does that outweigh the perceived risk? The risk to yourselves and to investors of capital and time and effort that would need to go into the thing that you're building. If the DApp exists, if it's easy for another project to build because they're already halfway there, then maybe it's a big risk to do what you want to do. There has to be something that's outstanding, but not too far off, not too grandeur that it's kind of unachievable. So it's that risk versus reward that judges would be looking for as well. So we'll move on, and I'll define this then as another exercise to take away, and we'll send this by email so that you can flesh this out and then use this as the foundation as you start to build out your slides for the deck. So this is called a product marketer's summary. And for those who don't know, real quick, a product marketer is a role that often exists in a startup that's beginning to scale, when they have enough resource to have this luxurious person who will sit in the middle of product department and the marketing department. And their job is to help bring clarity to both sides of the team on what the user wants, what the product should include or could include or to address, and also the marketing communications and messaging as well. So these are 6 questions that really nail down into what a product marketer is looking for. Take a screenshot. We will send this by our follow-up email, and take time to answer these. What we're looking for is a succinct explanation, not paragraphs of content and information for each of these areas. So let me know if there's any questions on that, but I think that's going to be good. And so we'll move on. Instead of putting 10 minutes on the clock, spend at least 10 minutes, maybe looking for 2 or 3 sentence responses to each of these. And again, this is very valuable content to include to clearly communicate your idea for the Ideathon pitch. Let's move on now to the next slide for your pitch. And these are the main sections that we might suggest that you include. You don't have to, but let's go through them. And probably this is a very measured way of not having too hard a time of having 10 different types of slide concept like market sizing and financials. This is a tidier way to present things for the Ideathon. So the first section is your problem definition and status quo. Again, relating back to that customer context, what is it that you're looking to address from that human perspective? That should probably be front, left, and center of your deck. And then looking at the status quo as well. What are the substitute solutions that people are currently using? And be transparent, reveal that, suggest it, show it. Say that this is what people are currently doing to address this problem that they clearly have got, and try to highlight the inadequacies. Why is this not sufficient? Why would people go to the effort of using and buying something different? So then the second main section is trends, right? And trends is about the market demand and the innovations that we see taking place with regards to your big idea. We're revealing why the problem provides a timely market opportunity, why it's relevant today to be that big idea that is worth exploring, investing in building right now within the context of the broader marketplace, not just the individual customer's situation. And we also, again, want to be transparent about those innovations. So we're looking for the trends that are converging on you building your big idea. The third area is differentiation. So we've looked at problems, we looked at general trends and innovation in the market. Now, why is what you're doing genuinely better for a hungry and accessible customer audience? And that's where you put in your product description. So we're not starting with the product. We're not starting with what it is that you're building. We're starting with the human problem that you're looking to address. And then we're backing that up with why this is a big enough market opportunity because of the trends, technology trends, market trends, political trends, economic trends, whatever is relevant. And then we're getting to the point of how your idea fits into that and differentiates from the status quo. And so that's the third main section, differentiation. The fourth then is what we can call marketing and monetization, which boils down to this question: how can you confidently attract customers and convert them into revenue? Now, that's an easy question to read off the slide here and a difficult thing to achieve, and we understand that. So again, this is what the Ideathon is really about, is less about the technical intricacies of how you're going to implement something, but how you're going to bring those people and monetize. And to Hernan's question, it doesn't need to be slides and slides, but what are, we're going to look just in 2 slides here as we start to wrap up, look at the different types of monetization strategy. So that's section 4, marketing and monetization. We also suggest that you include some appendices, and you can have additional appendices as relevant to your project, but the first might be on insight. So this is the research that you've done. Where have you gone? What if you've done any surveys, if you've done any forum research, if you've looked at different platforms, different products, different apps, different blockchain communities, what are they doing? Show your work, right? Demonstrate the research that you've done. Show us what insight you've gathered in terms of customer and market research. And that might include that customer scenario map as well. Another good appendices to include is that product marketer's summary, which is the exercise that we've just outlined. You've got time until the submission to refine what that product marketer's summary is. So by the time that we receive your pitch, then that might be more refined than the exercise that you do after this workshop call. Another appendices that you may include is some level of prototype, and this does not have to be functional code. And that's the key idea again of the Ideathon. We're looking for that understanding of what your tool, your app is about, without necessarily having to have functional code. So that might be a UX front-end design concept, and it might be UML diagrams for those that are familiar with that. For high-level architecture, of how those features fit together from a user journey perspective. So again, we can see that the puzzle fits together. The judges can see that they understand and that you're clear on, from a user perspective, user journey perspective, that this idea would be welcomed by users, easy to use. And so those are the any questions there on what we're including in the pitch. Type them in now, or we'll move on to them just to round up the next couple of slides.
There's one, Gav, from Frios. I would imagine this Ideathon pitch is not going to include an ask section. Is that correct?
Correct. We're not looking for that. Again, back to Hernan's question as well, the monetization, the use of funds, the ask, how much we wanting to raise. That stuff is in the incubator. This is more focusing on the earlier stage part of a pitch deck, which is the problem and solution and the visible market opportunity, without having to go too deep into the how we would actually build this as a startup, which means the funding section. So that stuff, we don't need it. Focus on the problem, the human relatable problem, the evidence that we have, the trends in the market, just as we got here. And so marketing and monetization, but not necessarily the operational expenses of launching as a business. Any other questions there, Chris?
That is it for now that I see. But any last questions, folks? Don't feel shy. If people have questions after this, a lot of people are going to watch this after it's live. Any recommendations, Gav, where they should reach out to you?
Well, we're going to send an email follow-up from here and send out some notes later today on this pitch workshop. And Waxer or Chris, if you guys want to confirm if people can reply to those emails, and so that we get visibility of them, and that might be the best place to do that.
Yep, we can. And I guess we should also point everyone to the ENF. So if you're on the dev post page for the hackathon, you'll notice there's a link to the EOS Network's Discord channel. And there is a special public hackathon general channel there within that Discord that you can also ask questions. So I think that's probably another good place. And then we're quite active in the Helios Discord. So that's another great place to get all of the team here, Waxley, yourself, myself as well. We do have one more question that has come up from the new legend. What about research on whether it is something that can be coded or not? I don't think I can research that side with full confidence. Well, I can provide a little bit of an answer there just to before you go, Gav. Next week, and this is a great, just generally speaking, we've got the Antelope Technical Overview Workshop. So the next in the series of workshops is, in fact, addressing your point. What should you be considering as a person who isn't necessarily a dev when it comes to the technical abilities and what you should or shouldn't try to include? That's taking place next Wednesday, October 5th at 1500 UTC. Any thoughts from you on that, Gav?
Yeah, if you're not a developer, then don't worry about the technical bits and pieces, really. If you're working with as a team with a developer, then you can have some sense of that. But again, keep it light as well in terms of technical viability. But we do want to just, again, see from that user perspective, that front end perspective, does it make sense? And then if it's really a significant idea, then as the project advances, then we might be looking for a deeper clarification on how to build it technically. That's my sentiment. Yeah,
I think that's very fair. And also just everyone should keep their eyes out on the radar here. We will have a blog coming out from Helios. Wax is going to be writing something to help summarize a lot of this, especially from the pitch deck side, and maybe some summarizing some key points and some other bits there. So stay tuned. If you haven't checked out the Helios website, heliosrising.com, we've got a whole blog section, a lot of great articles there. Gabriel and Wax do quite a bit of blogging, and if you haven't seen any of that, I think there's a lot of good pieces that fit into, in fact, this pitch deck creation, and a lot of what Gabriel has spoken about does live on some of those blogs as additional resources. We've got one more question here from Hernan. What happens if we have no team? Should we skip that slide or just do a self-intro? Good question.
I would not skip the slide. Do include something that explains bios, team, who's working on the project. Definitely do include something along those lines.
Yeah, and I would suggest that even if you're an individual, part of this viability piece is, can you even deliver on this? If you are empowered to win first prize and you get the $6,000 from the Ideathon in one of the 5 categories, which, as a reminder, are DeFi, Web3, Gov3, social good, and GameFi. One of the judges will be considering, can this thing actually get built? Like, is it more than just an idea? And you will get extra points for that from the viability section. So if you can include that you have some sort of plan about how this thing could actually get built, there is more to your team than just a solo idea man. I think that would be a benefit, but it's not a requirement, to answer your question, I think, Hernan. And and it looks like, Justice, I just answered your question. Is it only Web3 ideas? So no, for the GameFi track, the Trust EVM GameFi track, it is only GameFi. So if you're building something on the Trust EVM, which has to get deployed to the Trust EVM testnet, that is specifically focused on GameFi. However, if you're submitting ideas to the Ideathon, which is what we've seen of the 8 or so submissions that actually have already come in, beyond the 130 or so participants that have signed up, they've all been Ideathon focused thus far. And they range between those 5 categories that I mentioned. And if you do make your way over to the dev post page, which we can throw in the chat here, you'll see it's all listed out, the 5 categories, the judging criteria for both the Trust EVM track and the Ideathon track. They're not the same judging criteria, slightly different. So you want to have a look at that. And Gabriel has spoken to some of those points for the Ideathon as well. And yeah, that just came up in the chat there. So certainly click on that and have a look through. And I think there's no other questions. I don't know, any closing remarks, Gabriel, before we shut it down?
Yeah, so we just got 3 other slides here to go through.
Apologies. Let's bring that back up.
Yep. So what we're looking at now is a slide with way too much detail for a pitch deck. If you need more slides, then add more slides. This one is an example of what we might be looking for. Far fewer words. Chris, just back one. I got it. No, for the example. There you go. So this is what we're looking for. A slide like this that speaks to the, use brevity, be very succinct in the amount of text on the slide. And then because you're recording your presentation, you will have a longer narrative that you can talk to, and use words on the slide to signal the point you're making while expanding with your spoken words. So we don't want to see thick text like I'm giving you a presentation, I'm not giving you a pitch, right? So that's why there's so much text on the slide. But it's important to have brevity in your slides, like this example slide here. And then almost finally, again, to Hernan's point, in terms of monetization, we will send a link in the notes for this call, but make sure you're attending to our emails so that you get these updates. And there's a web page with Web3 primitives for monetization. And we're looking for that traditional viable business perspective, not just fancy tokenomics. So think about it from your current idea perspective and how the product can evolve over time. And you might be looking for these types of opportunities. Is there a franchise fee that you might charge as relevant? What about advertising fees for advertising space within your app? What are the unit sales, the individual things that you sell, and the kind of price point that you're looking at? Are there subscription fees to get, either from your initial sale, the first customer, or later on as you add more features and benefits to what you're offering? So this page is a very good reference for thinking through your monetization strategy. And one final slide is, we will include this link. It's very much worth watching to get a sense of how to be presentable in your actual pitch. When you send a recorded pitch, or a little less like us off the cuff with the long presentation, but when it comes to making a pitch, an investment pitch, you want to be very polished, far more than I have been on this call. very polished with exactly the points that you want to make, almost word for word. You're not being creative in the moment when you're making a short, succinct investment pitch. And this video will give you very good perspective that will help for your current pitch, and also moving into the future as you develop startup relationships and build a bigger team. So thanks to Brock Pierce for making Helios possible. Thanks to the ENF and the EOS.io Antelope blockchain developers. And thanks to my daily collaborators at Helios, Chris Barnes and Chris Waxer, for helping to evolve Helios impact in our community. And with that, I'll hand you back to Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Gav. Great job. Yeah, lots here. I think folks should watch through this again, pause the video, look at some, especially some of those work through slides where Gav suggested taking 10 minutes. Like, really do that. If you, make the most of this presentation, and we'll call it what we've been doing the incubator for 9 months, almost 10 months now. So there's a lot of work, and so this sort of what you saw here is really a culmination of not only many years of work and experience that Gabriel has in Waxa, but also just a lot of projects that have come through our incubator. So I encourage folks to make the most of that. Again, join us in the Discord, both in the EOS Network Foundation's EOS Network's Discord channel there. Come to the hackathon place, ask some questions, and respond to the emails you'll be getting. If you haven't signed in yet, when you join the actual hackathon itself on the dev post page, you can opt in to receiving emails, and the emails you'll be getting are part of this content. So we're not going to be spamming you with opportunities to buy random things. That's not the intention of getting you to sign up. It's to actually give you information about this project and about the information coming out here. So next week, Wednesday, October 5th at 1500 UTC, we've got the Antelope Technical Overview Workshop. So if you've got questions about that, and I expect many in the Ideathon will, I encourage you to follow along there. So join us next week. Thank you, everyone. Oh, wait a minute. We got one last question. Paying attention. Oh, it's off. It's on. Justice. Last question. Is there a place one can find others pitching in the past? Not for this, because for the Ideathon, in terms of this hackathon event, this is the first one of these. So there is no other example. And I don't think, have we done any public incubator pitches?
No, there haven't been. It's just been for the alumni and investment stakeholders to date, but that's a nice idea. We can organize something as a community experience with public pitches. Yeah,
great idea. And about the email, I still get past emails if I join late. I don't think so. No, unfortunately, you won't. The new legend. You'll have to, sign up. Hopefully, you can maybe, if you did sign up and you didn't click that box, maybe you can go back and edit that. I'm not, in fact, sure how that works, but no, we won't be resending. Then again, everything is here in this, so anything we will be sending was already kind of included here, so you can always just rewatch this. And in the live chat, Wax has been putting in some links that are relevant as well, so hopefully you can still get what you need. And then what do we have here? Another question from Justice, so that one can see them pitching or maybe past winners. So again, this is the first Ideathon, so there are no past winners. This is the very first of these. This is the first time we will have a set of winners in an Ideathon. It might be something we do again. Seems like we're getting a lot of interest, and so this probably speaks to this being a good tool to bring the community together and to bring new faces into the EOS ecosystem. That again, so that in mind, if you are watching this and you're from maybe a different ecosystem in the blockchain and crypto space, have a look. This is to hopefully bring you over, and you can sort of recognize that your idea and how it might work on an Antelope blockchain, which EOS is, because you'll find that the technical prowess of Antelope, half-a-second blocks, the scalability, we've got thousands of transactions per second, so very, very, very wide open there, extremely low gas fees. EOS uses a gas model. So something you might have thought about existing on Ethereum might be completely impractical, if not impossible, due to even after the merge, you still have 13-second block time. If you want to do a social media app and you want to hit the like button, no one wants to wait 13 seconds for it to turn blue because you actually hit the button. You have half-a-second latency on EOS and Antelope blockchains, which is highly powerful. Now, also gas fees, right? If you're trying to do something that does multiple on-chain transactions, you're not going to want to pay $10 to $100 for a transaction. You're going to want to pay a fraction of a cent, which is what you get on EOS and other Antelope chains. So definitely encourage that. So yeah, and just to this question again, there are no past winners, nothing to see, unfortunately. This will be the first time. So November 14th. Well, first of all, I do believe the presentations, the submissions might be publicly viewable on the DevPost page, but definitely on November 14th, that will be a live presentation. You'll get to see 15 different projects pitched live, and there will be winners announced on that day. And I think, what's this last question from Frios? 9 months of incubation to hatch a baby. That's how it works, unfortunately. Yeah, well, depending on the type of baby. If you're a chicken, it's only 21 days. But okay, I think we'll call it. I think we've got it all. So thanks everyone. Thank you, Gabriel. Let's shut her down, and we'll see everybody on the next broadcast. Take care.